by a special guest, my friend Emma from the channel Bookish Princess.
Hi,
so
guys.
Thank you, Emma, for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for being here. This is really fun.
It is a big treat of a day, and we thought while we were together, we should take advantage of that and film a couple of videos. So I don't know when our videos will be going up, but I'll make sure to link the video that goes up on Emma's channel whenever it does go up. And I thought it would be fun for us to talk about our favorite families in literature. Because we both really are drawn to stories of people having human connection together and kind of going through trials together and having personal growth as a result of that.
Yeah. And like the siblings and like the parent-child relationship and just like all the sort of family patois, like the language that they speak to each other and the jokes, and it's just always really sweet. Especially like stories with children. Like it's fun to see the children growing up and you know, just in their family life.
And especially because there are certain authors that like you get children. Like that totally seems like something a child would do. So we have not talked about our families, and I thought it would be fun if we would take turns, and I know we're going to have some of the same. And I will open us up, and Emma enjoys this series also, and it is the Ray family from the Betsy-Tacy series. And what I love about this family is that they are very aware of the fact that their children are individuals, and they want to nurture those individual interests, and they definitely view their children as having autonomy, and they're very intent on kind of nurturing the interests that they have.
Yeah.
And I also think the Ray family has a great sense of humor, and how Mr. Ray, when he has an idea, he says he'd like to give us a suggestion. And I find that really endearing. So yeah, I love that her parents are such a positive part of the story. And she really has a high regard for them.
Yeah, they're so sweet. I have the same copy. But I love how you get to see them grow up together too in high school and in, you know, and like little Margaret, she's so tiny, and then you see her growing up, and it's just so sweet, all of their adventures together. And yeah, the way they support each other, Betsy with her writing, Julia with her music.
Yes. Yeah, and then it is fun to see, like you said, Margaret she's such a quiet and reserved little girl, and then in Betsy's wedding, how she has a best friend and they call each other Boogie and Bogey. And it's like, who are you? You've really come out of your shell. So we both really love the Ray family. And all right, so who is your family you have on your list?
So I had to go with the Ingalls family from Little House on the Prairie. I have all of them up on my shelf there, but it's so sweet the way you start with like Little House in the Big Woods. And that you really get to see the extended family because they live close to all their aunts and uncles. And it's so fun the way you see it through Laura's eyes because she's only 5 years old. But like, you know, they go to the house party and like all the ladies with their hoop skirts and like all the dishes that they cooked for each other and all the babies lying on the bed together. And it's just really sweet to see their close family dynamic. And then, of course, as they go out onto the prairie, it's really just them because they're kind of restless. Pa Ingalls is kind of moving the family west. But you know, they face everything together and support each other. And this is another one where you get to see them grow up. So you know, you really get to see them all the way until they end up. There's a point where Ma Ingalls, I think, it's like, you can't take us any further west. We're gonna stop here. It's not that busy. I mean, admittedly, we can see our neighbors, but.
And I also like that Pa really valued her opinions. And at one point, I can't even remember where he's thinking of going. He's going to do something. And she says, no, Charles. And he kind of looks at her. He's shocked, like she doesn't usually speak that way. But he's like, okay. And he just listens to her.
Yeah.
And I really like that. But they're such a team I think it's on the banks of Plum Creek when the locusts come. And Pa comes inside. I feel like crying just talking about it. And he just like puts his head down on the table. And Ma goes over and rubs his head and says, it's okay, Charles. We've been through hard times before and we'll get through these together. Yeah. I mean, in the pioneer era, you just had no choice but to be that way.
No, the grit these characters have, it's like, it's nothing. All these like things that we would probably be crushed by. They're just pick up and move right along. And you know, I'm realizing I didn't grab Farmer Boy, but Ingalls family is wonderful. The Wilder family is also wonderful because Farmer Boy is about Laura Ingalls Wilder's husband, Almanzo Wilder, when he grew up on a farm in New York. And he has, because Laura has 2 sisters, but Almanzo had 2 sisters and just one brother, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's fun to see their relationship as well.
Yes. Yeah, very fun. Okay, the next one on my list is the Melendi Family Quartet by Elizabeth Enright. So, 4-story mistake. And this is confession. I've actually only read the first 2, and I've loved them so much, and I keep meaning to get to the other ones. It's outrageous. I haven't done so yet. But yeah, the Saturdays is the first one, actually, then the 4-story mistake. Have you read these?
I have. It's been way too long. I remember enjoying them, but like it's just I don't remember the Melendi though. I was like, oh, I know that name.
Yes, yes. And what I like, another kind of requirement for me to love a series is that the children, each of the siblings have distinct personalities, and that very much so is the case for these 4 children. And they're also very funny. And I love, there's one, I think her name might be Mona, and she's very much like the romantic, and she's, kind of an Anne Shirley, like she sees the world as this very romantic and wondrous place. And she isn't always very practical, and her brother will kind of bring her back down to earth again. And they're just very situational, kind of each chapter is some little scrape they get into, and I really like that about them.
I need to reread those. Those are so sweet.
Yeah.
It's so fun to go back and reread like books you enjoyed as a child. It's like you
Yes.
forgot how delightful they were.
Yes. And I wish I had known about these as a child because Elizabeth Enright also wrote Gone Away Lake and Return to Gone Away Lake.
I was gonna say I just read Gone Away Lake.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
And you enjoyed it?
Yeah, I thought it was really sweet.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. And so I don't know how I didn't know about the Melendy Family Quartet. So, what is your next family?
Yes. Well, I have here, of course, the March family. So classic.
Yes.
Talk about personality. All 4 sisters just have so much personality. And Marmee, too. I feel like they're all just so beloved.
Yes.
You know, and Jo, of course, is such a great kind of main character, and it's so fun to follow them, because we have Little Women and then Good Wives. And actually, I haven't read them in a long time, like Jo's Boys and those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're like quite as top tier as Little Women, but they're fun. It's still fun to see kind of the finished relationship, or the Jo's future. And I visited Louisa May Alcott's house out in Massachusetts, and it was just so fun. I feel like that brought the family even more to life because it's so like her sisters were so clearly her inspiration, and
yes.
The way they come to life in the book, and all of their like quirks, and how Jo and Amy don't always get along, and they have really a temper, and just all of their personalities are so great, and it's so sweet to see them together.
Yeah, I agree. I like they each have different strengths. And the March family was on my list too. And I also somebody pointed out that they think Amy and Jo are not actually that different. Kind of to have financial security as adults, though, they have a different strategy for that. And so Amy is like, I will get married, and Jo's like, I will write for myself and support myself. But they are both very kind of tenacious about that. So, yeah. Oh, so good. All right, then the next one on my list is the Vanderbeekers series by Karena Yan Glaser. And what is really cool about this series is that I feel like a lot of the ones that I like are set in the countryside. And this is set in Brooklyn in a brownstone house. And so their neighborhood feels very much like its own little community. And so they have like a bakery that they go to regularly where everyone knows them. And their landlord they know. And they have neighbors, an elderly couple that live upstairs. And they have a great nephew who's regularly hanging out there. And it's fun because these kids, they all have very different interests. One is very into science, and one is really into basketball. And another one is really into playing musical instruments. And so getting to see them grow and go through the different trials that they do, and then also how much they love their parents, and the length that they will go to do show that they love their parents for them. These big grand acts that they do. The one thing though that I do find a little bit frustrating as a reader is that I feel like in Little Women or in the Henry Huggins books, the kids get in kind of like scrapes honestly. Whereas in the Vanderbeekers series, sometimes it's like they have this secret plan that they're doing. And so you have to be willing to have the stress of like what is going to happen when the secret plan is unveiled. And there are kind of consequences from that. But other than that, I really do love the series and I highly recommend it. And Peter and I are very excited. The latest one has come out. So we're just waiting. Hopefully the library will get the audiobook and we can listen to it together.
So fun. I'm not familiar with that one.
Oh, I think you'd really enjoy it. It's very
awesome.
fun. Yes. It always makes me hungry too because one of the parents is Korean and I can't remember if it's the mom or the dad. But so they're always referencing Korean food and then the mom bakes. And so, yeah, just she has these like interesting combinations for cookies and
that's awesome.
It's very homey and cozy. Okay, what's the next one on your list?
So I have Elizabeth Goudge, the Elliot family. So a lot of these have been children's books, but these are adult literature. Although Elizabeth Goudge wrote The Little White Horse is children's. But this follows the Elliot family through quite a span of time. And you have Lady Elliot. Isn't she Lady Elliot? Why?
I think that.
Yeah.
I mean, Lucilla.
Yes, Lucilla. And she's very grand. She's very ladylike. That's why I'm calling her Lady Elliot, even though I now can't remember.
Isn't that funny? Once you love the series, but it's hard to remember all of the character names.
Lucilla is what they often call her. That she's the grandmother, and she actually lost her kind of most beloved eldest son in the war, World War I.
Already, you know that's going to be interesting if you know it's her most beloved son.
But she has many other children. She has a son who's a clergyman. She has a daughter, and she also has. It's so funny. She has two more sons who are alive. The clergyman, and then there's an army military man. And then she has it would have been a fourth son, including the son who died, who we hear about in like the first book, and then we hear very briefly about him in the second, and by the third it's like we've forgotten who he is. It's like, but the rest of the family are so well drawn. It's George. Oh my gosh, I read this earlier this year, so I felt like I would remember their names. There are too many of them.
There are too many of them.
But we get to know their children as well. So like the grandchildren. And like there's like the in-laws, and there's like some conflict between them. And Lucilla's eldest son who died, she does have his son. So he had a son born before he died, David, and he's one of the main characters.
It has a very much like a family saga feel to it.
It's very much a family saga. And George and Nadine, they then have 4 young children. They're the twins. They have 5, don't they? Because they have
it's
Tommy.
been like 5 years since I read it.
Tommy. Oh my gosh. Okay, Margaret. See, this is such a family tree that even if I told you the names, you would lose track of them too, because there are 3 generations. But anyway, it's just I think there are 5 kids. George and Nadine have, and it's just so fun to see them. And they end up buying a house, and like the houses are as like kind of anchoring the family are very very strong, and they're kind of characters themselves and. Learning about the families that used to live in those houses and their struggles and their triumphs. And Elizabeth Goudge just writes so beautifully about spiritual strength. So that's a beautiful part of it as well. But
and I love to, particularly in the first book, which is at Pilgrim's Inn, or, I forget the American titles. Are
Burn the Tree is the first, yeah.
It is really kind of, what are you going to do as an adult when you don't get what you want? Not, you have what you need, but when you don't get what you want. And kind of, we see how 3-year-olds deal with it. Sometimes, unfortunately, we see adults who deal with it like 3-year-olds. And I love, it really is, it doesn't paint over the pain that characters are in and take it lightly. But it kind of shows, what are you going to do with this? How are you going to grow from this? Very cool. And I love those beautiful additions.
So pretty.
Okay, the next one that I have, and they don't have a lot of on-the-page time, but I just love any scene they're in, and that is the Meyrick family in Daniel Deronda. And they have I think it's 3 girls, and their mother who is a widow, and then they have an older brother, Hans, who he is good friends with Daniel Deronda. And any scene that they're in, they bring such life and kind of like joie de vivre to the scenes. And they savor and relish the books that they're reading, the music that they're playing, and just love to live life to the fullest. So they're only in maybe like 3 or 4 scenes of Daniel Deronda, but they really stick out, and there's a lot of warmth in that household.
Yeah.
All right, what's your next one?
Well, I kind of had to give a shout out to these because they were some of my favorites growing up. And the American Girl books that go with like the historical doll characters, these are just 2, Felicity and Josefina. But they're all from different eras. So Felicity is the Revolutionary War, 1774. Josefina is 1824 in a rancho near Santa Fe, New Mexico. So you get to see these little slices of life in different times and places. And from all different ethnicities, because of course many of the American Girls are immigrants, and it's just so sweet to see their family traditions, and they always have siblings and like a close family, and I think at the beginning there's always a little family tree, which is so fun to see everybody like who's going to be in the story then, and it's just really, I feel like they do a nice job bringing multiple generations and siblings and parents and just bringing them all into the picture.
Yes.
And they're just very sweet.
They are very sweet. Yeah, Josefina was the doll that I had growing up. And I still remember like the Christmas that I got her. It was all so exciting. I had won an American Girl doll
That's
for
so perfect.
long.
Felicity is my favorite and was the first I got. So I didn't even know that. I just picked up Josefina. But yeah, I remember when I got Felicity, I would like open the catalogs and like pour over them. And then finally when I was, I think the same age, Felicity, 8 or so, I got a Felicity doll. And it was just
That's so fun. And I remember too, when my younger cousins got them, my mom had my uncle make a little American Girl fridge, like a refrigerator. It was really, really cute. So they had a whole setup for their dolls.
They're so lovely. I got Felicity right before we were going on a family trip to Williamsburg. And I think I'd already read the book. So it was so fun. It was like, oh, this is just like Felicity's father's store. And like, you know.
Yes.
Really sweet.
Yeah, Williamsburg is a great, great site to visit if you're kind of in that settler era America. Yeah, very cool. Okay, and then the next one, and this is very timely, is the Edmonstone family from the Heir of Redclyffe by Charlotte Mary Yonge. And Emma is currently reading The Heir of Redclyffe. And I think that we were talking about this earlier, and it's been the case in every single Charlotte Mary Yonge book I've encountered, is that she's so good at having kind of these sparkling scenes with lots of characters, and the conversation is almost this symphony, you know, all this going back and forth. And if you think when there's a lively family spending time together, there isn't, you know, everybody sits while one person talks and then they go around. It's lots of chaos happening all at once.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel bad when I film videos with my brothers because we talk over each other. But you don't even notice that you do it. It's like afterwards, I'm like, shoot, I was trying to talk. We were trying to not talk over each other, but it's just, yeah, because you're just used to talking and you get into that rhythm. I love that way, a symphony. That's a good way to describe it. Because I've been loving that family as well. They're so, you feel like you're there in their family circle with all their jokes and like they know like, okay, I'm going to prod you about this thing, but this other thing, I'm going to give you a break and and I'm not going to bring that up. So.
Yes. Yeah, and I love too what is really interesting about her being a Victorian author is she usually has one character that has a disability in each book. But the disability is kind of like, yes, they have this, and then they're this, you know, fully fledged human being. In the 3 Brides that I'm reading right now, there's a character who is albino, and it's just remarked on he's albino, he has some trouble with his eyesight, and then we just move on. So yeah, she has characters from kind of all walks of life. And there's also just a lot of heart, and they're very sentimental feeling, so I really, really like them. So Emma, would you like to talk about, we put up a picture on your computer screen. Who is that family?
Yes, this is the All of a Kind family. All of, because five girls, right?
Wow, it is 5.
Yeah.
I thought it was 4. No, you're right. It's 5 girls and then eventually a baby brother.
Yes. That's such a sweet story. There's a Jewish family growing up in New York City, right? Mm-hmm. And yeah, kind of like you were saying earlier, like in the city you have your like shops that you go to in this little community. I feel like they have a little Jewish community, and you get to hear about all of, they're religious, so you hear about all of the way they celebrate the holidays, which is so nice, because you might not have even known that was how it was celebrated, and they really, they're obviously passing their faith on to their children, so they're explaining, this is why we put the loaf of bread here and all that.
Yes.
But yeah, they're just so sweet, all of them, and just since all these little girls with their cute little pinafores and dresses going over all around the place.
And it has so many funny parts, and I remember there's one scene where the one daughter keeps coming home past curfew, and finally her dad's like, I'm going to teach her a lesson. And so he just grabs, she's home, I'm going to grab her and I'm going to spank her. And then all of a sudden he hears his little girl going, Daddy, what are you doing? And he was spanking her friend. He just grabbed her, and I think it was dark. He was waiting for her, I'm going to teach her a lesson. So he was horrified, of course. And then it's also got some bookish love in it. There's kind of one of the oldest sister has a kind of romance at the library, and
I love I feel like the library is such a great sort of presence in that series.
Yeah, it's a big part of their life. They cannot afford to buy books, and I do think owning books is more a phenomena later in the 20th century. Yeah. So the library was really key to people who couldn't afford to own lots of books.
You mentioning the daughter who sneaks out all the time. I'm sure it's the same daughter, I would bet, who gets a tea stain on her dress. And I think she wasn't supposed to go out that night. And so, or she wasn't supposed to wear the dress.
It was her sister's dress.
Yes. And then they end up dyeing the whole dress tea color. It's just such a cute way of fixing that problem. Yes. You're not going to get the tea stain out, so just make the whole dress a pretty sort of light brown.
Yeah, a delightful mauve. Okay, and then the next family that I have is the Ridgeway family from Family Grandstand by Carol Ryrie Brink, who also wrote Caddy Woodlawn. Oh. And I think you'd really enjoy this. And then the sequel is called Family Sabbatical. And they live in a college town. Their father is a professor. And their mother, to kind of earn some extra income, she's writing mysteries. And it just has a very, kind of festive feel to it. Just celebrating all of the joys and delights in life. But they're constantly wondering, how can we make more money to get these kind of treats that we want? And they're very, very funny. They end up with this wild dog. He's very big to be living in their house. But they all love him. He's knocking things over with his tail constantly. And it has seasonal awareness. Books always get points with me if you know kind of the passing of the years it goes through. That's another thing about Betsy-Tacy. They're very seasonally aware. In Family Sabbatical, they go on vacation to, I think it's Paris. So I'm very excited to read that. And I'm reading it with the Kindred Spirits Club in November. Yeah, that will be a treat.
Save the date for that. I should grab a copy. That sounds delightful.
Yeah, I think you'd like them. And then one last family, and that is the Brunetti family. And this is it's a mystery series by Donna Leon, and they're set in Venice. They're contemporary. And what I love is Commissario Brunetti and his wife Paola. They have very opposite personalities, but you can tell what regard they have for one another, and knowing that we don't have to be exactly the same to be a good team. And she is an English professor, and she adores Henry James. She's always going on about Henry James. And he has a teenage daughter and teenage son, and Rafi and Chiara. And I just love, they always, if it's set in Italy, any scene at the dinner table, you're going to hear about all the food and how much they really savor the food and how it's this real focal point. He has kind of a crazy schedule when he's out investigating crimes, and his kids have extracurriculars. His wife is busy, but they sit down and they have dinner together as a family.
That's so nice.
Yeah, it's really nice.
There was one other I was thinking of mentioning, although I can't remember the name of the family, but the Railway Children, that series. I just loved how they, all the siblings, sort of set up house together. I just thought that sounded so cute, the way, they move into the railway car and make it so cozy and are all supporting each other. Although, it was making me think, that when it's like Disney movies, they get rid of the parents so that things can happen to the children. Like, it's actually sometimes a little tricky to find like a book about like a happy family with like good relationships, because sometimes that doesn't make for the most dramatic fiction.
No, it's very true, and that's often, you know, when there's an orphan, I think that's a useful literary device because they instantly have your sympathy. You know, oh, here's this kid who doesn't have their parents. So I understand why people use it as a plot device, but it's really refreshing then when you do have those stories that can have, you empathize with the children, but they have supportive parents who they respect. Yes, so thank you, Emma, for joining me in this.
This is so fun. I feel like I have a bunch of books I need to go read now.
Yes, and now I want to reread a bunch too. All right, thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.